This is a video on our Global Perspectives Group project. Today I will be exploring the issue labor exploitation under the topic of human rights. So our aim of the project was to suggest and identify the ways in which we could bring more awareness to current labor exploitation. So what is labor exploitation? Labor exploitation is the act of treating workers unfairly for one's own benefit. Labor exploitation can take place in many forms, such as workers being unfairly paid, workers working in unsafe conditions, working longer hours than usual. Through our research, we found out that labor exploitation is prevalent in India, Bangladesh, Australia, Thailand, Nepal, and many other countries. India, Bangladesh, and Australia have a great number of laborers being exploited and ill-treated. Labor exploitation in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, with a population of 121 million people, has a large and cheap labor force of around 60 million people. Most of the jobs fall under non-agricultural. Employers are expected to carry out the government's labor laws, which specify employment conditions such as working hours, wage levels, leave policies, health and sanitary conditions, and compensation for injured workers. But these conditions are very poor in Bangladesh. Labor exploitation in India. India too has a vast population and around 60 million citizens are victims of labor exploitation. Through research findings, it is found that 15 cents is earned every hour. This tells us the poor conditions of India, and this contributes to poverty as well. Labor exploitation in Australia. Labor exploitation is present in Australia. Temporary workers will have a temporary skill visa, and this is vulnerable to exploitation. Cases of human trafficking for labor exploitation and forced labor have been found in a variety of employment sectors in Australia. Around 63% of the workforce is exploited in Australia. Also, the wage rate and/or the wage pay is below the minimum wage payment in some areas. This is illegal and this contributes to labor exploitation. Mostly immigrant workers are exploited and this creates a negative impact on the Australian economy. A survey was conducted and many questions about labor exploitation were asked, and these are the questions and responses from people. A total of 35 people had answered these questions. The question 1 was, on a scale of 1 to 10, lowest to highest, how well are you aware of the topic labor exploitation? It was an average rating of 5.9 was given, which means round off to 6. Question 2. What exactly do you think are the causes of labor exploitation? 13 people's responses were poverty, 9 people's responses were high unemployment, 13 replied as laws and enforcements are inadequate. Question 3 was, what do you think are the consequences of labor exploitation? 15 people thought it is economic growth is restrained, 14 people thought poor health of workers, 6 people thought poor international image of country. Question 4 was, what steps or measures do you think the government can take to ensure the safety of laborers? 21 people thought stricter laws for protecting workers. 11 people answered work loyalties and rights. 3 people answered supporting trade unions. Another question was surveyed. Do you have any effective solutions for this? If yes, then please specify. Some of the main responses are summarized into the following. Educate people in poverty about labor exploitation so that they are aware when they are being exploited. There should be stricter laws enforced upon by the government, and there should be one holiday per week and strict time limits. The government should impose strict laws against labor exploitation. Also, trade unions must be supported. Maybe a contract can be made which may be signed by the owner and the labor, which protects the human rights of labor. Some of the other responses were collaboration with the government should be done, as in we can request them to send in inspectors to observe the working conditions of the work, minimum labor rate and pension funds, regular checks by the government, maybe a government official can do daily or regular checks, and fines for those who do not abide by the laws. Support by means of financial aid, spreading adequate awareness. Better appreciation of workers' rights, monitoring and long-term protection by effective pension plans. It was seen here that about Half the respondents were unaware of any effective solutions to put an end to this issue. We had two other questions. What do you think an individual should do if they recognize forced labor or exploitation of workers? The main responses were take it up with concerned authorities to protect the rights of workers. The workers together can form a trade union and conduct a strike. Take immediate actions by reporting them to the police or any form of law. Report it or take any photos by way of evidence to support accusations later. A majority of respondents gave the solution of calling the police over for help, which is reasonable to some extent. Our last question was, which countries do you think are the main drivers of labor exploitation? The answers were India, Bangladesh, China, Middle Eastern countries, and Australia. We had conducted a survey to understand what people think about labor exploitation. In order to gather cross-cultural perspectives, we went out on the streets of Singapore on a public holiday, which is a public holiday for most of the laborers in Singapore, and we took interviews of workers we met on the street and in grocery stores. These workers were from India, Bangladesh, and Australia. The picture to the left, a Bangladeshi worker is being interviewed. The picture in the middle, the three workers from India and Bangladesh are being asked questions. The picture to the right, an Indian worker is being asked questions about his working conditions and experience. The questions asked were, for how long have you been in Singapore? What is your occupation here? What are your work timings? Do you think you are fairly paid for your job and is your pay even postponed? Do you think you receive appropriate resting time? Do you think you are provided with good and satisfying food and an appropriate place to live? Are your working conditions safe according to you? How often are you overworked and are you forced to do very arduous tasks which are not a part of your job? The responses are summarized into the following. 5 in 10 of the workers we interviewed seemed readily acceptive of being exploited by their answers to our questions. Putting these statistics aside, we were mostly not welcomed by the workers to take an interview even when we assured them that their identities will be kept a secret. We speculate that they were fearful of losing their jobs if they would open up about their work and working conditions. The response from Australia, a new report calls for a more targeted, more reliable and sustainable labor migration program. The government this week committed to tougher measures for labor hire schemes. Worker exploitation is said to have become the norm. Thank you for watching our video and please share this video as we need to spread awareness and we need people to know about this global issue which is labor exploitation.